So your claim is specifically that uh, the infrastructure does not and cannot exist to
Yes.
sustain. So you're saying that like it's incompatible with
Our
the
world is
lack of
incompatible with only one type of like diet. Like if you only tried to push veganism, it would not only fail on a socio-cultural level, but it would fail on an economic level, and it would also fail on an environmental level, right? And if you only tried meat, the same thing would happen. You wouldn't be able to sustain the population on only one type of diet. It is physically impossible. We don't have the infrastructure to do it in any way. Not to mention it wouldn't work.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm like I'm less so much concerned with like the cultural implications of this. I mean, really, the because I think that that's just like a trivial matter. Really, the question is
Really?
just
Okay,
like,
so let me ask you this. Sociocultural, if vegans tried to push this and we all slaughter you, like we just decide to kill you, so you shut up, right? Because you're not going to do it otherwise, right? You're not going to stop talking about it otherwise. You're pushing it legislatively. So what if the vast majority of the population just hung you all? That's sociocultural, right? Again, the cultural does matter. You have to focus on that. If people reject the idea and you keep pushing it, they'll kill you eventually. Like they will get violent at some point, right? Look at what happened to the French and the royalty. They tried their fucking hand and they got killed because of it, right? Because they pushed something that the people did not want.
right, but this is like not an environmental claim. Like we can only really
No.
discuss one thing at a time.
Well, no, we can cover the vast majority of it. We could cover sociocultural, environmental, economic, all
Yeah,
at
I
once.
mean,
It
I'm
wouldn't
just
really be
trying to like
hard.
iron out a proposition though, right? Like, what is it that you
Okay.
actually want to make like a claim in regards to the environmental aspects?
The environmental aspect, okay. On an environmental level, we don't have the land, right? Because to feed one person with a
Well,
cow
I'm just
versus with
well, mostly what I'm interested in is like the actual like proposition. So you're
yeah, my
saying,
proposition is essentially that we would not on a environmental level, whether it be land and or good for the environment, right? I mean environmental as in the environment would be severely damaged if we tried to push only vegan, right? Because one, there's no such thing as running a how do we put it farm without using animal products, right? Because you have to use their manure, you have to use things like that, and those animals would get out of control, right? So you have to slaughter them at some point, or let animals slaughter them, which would be a waste because they wouldn't be able to eat all of them. But again, one way or another, these animals will die, right? So, and they need to. So, my point is that from an environmental level, whether it be land or whatever else, growing only plants would be infeasible, even if you did it in the ocean. Infeasible.
okay, yeah, I'm still trying to get to like a so because the problem is that you bring up like some things that are vague, like that there's like going to be environmental destruction, which like I could just grant that
Okay,
as like trivial
you'd
true.
have to, you would have to destroy more forests, deforestation. You would have to take over land that other animals live on. Again, you'd have to expand farms to be able to grow more food to supply the fact that we wouldn't be getting meat in our diets. Assuming everyone was just okay with eating meat, which, well, whatever, right? And assuming it wouldn't affect it, any other way, right? Just the environment, right? You'd have to destroy more forests because we don't have the sheer infrastructure to grow that many plants to feed the amount of people we have, right? We then would have to kill a bunch of animals in some way or another to create that land and cultivate it into something that would be able to grow these plants.
And to keep
So
the
again, my
animals
point is that
off of your crops, you have to kill
yes,
them. You have to kill shrews, birds, mice, fucking
not to mention
coyotes.
when you till the land, you're ripping up the dirt, which kills the shrews and the snakes and the other creatures in that land. You'd also have to use honeybees to grow and to pollinate these flowers and these fruits to supply that demand, killing billions every year, similar to how they do for almond milk. So again, my point is that environmentally, it would be a disaster both on a plant level and on a animal level to grow and on a land level to grow these plants to feed people. I'm saying you couldn't get the numbers out. It wouldn't be possible without killing some amount of animals and or
Oh
having
well, I
to
mean, like I
destroy
just accept
forests.
that that's trivially true. Which is, I mean, like I'm just not even sure that they're like if you're just saying that like some number of animals are gonna die. I mean, like if I
No, not
take
some. I
my
mean a lot.
yeah, but I'm
Like
just saying that
thousands.
like if I take my car out for a spin, I've technically just increased the number of animals that are gonna die, right? Like if I hit a single fly. So Like, I just would accept that as trivially true. I'm not even sure that
We're not
that's like
talking
a
about
topic of debate.
flies or insects. I'm talking about like voles, mice, snakes. I'm talking about
Oh,
animals,
sure.
not insects, right? I'm saying that to grow these things, not just insects. We'll ignore the billions of bees for a moment, which we shouldn't because they keep our environment alive, but whatever. We'll just ignore them, right? You'd have to kill voles. You would have to somehow kill cows and pigs and other things because we need their bones and other things to create the bone meal that we use, right? Because otherwise, what else? Who else's bones are you going to use, right? For bone meal, because you need bone meal to grow plants. You also would need their manure, and you'd also need to keep their populations in check. Because if you don't keep their populations in check, they will eat and kill your crops.
Yeah, I mean,
So again,
I'm still not understanding how we're getting to, because I thought that the proposition, it was the proposition that you're interested in discussing that, so I guess I took it to be that the direct consumption of animal products, that if we all halt that, there's going to be some sort of economic problem or economic or environmental problem that represents some sort of
Yes,
contradiction with the inability to feed everybody in some fashion or something like that. Like what you're saying seems to be a
to an
bunch of
extent, I'm
trivial
saying
things that contribute to that, but I'm still not understanding if that's
I'm
like your
saying
actual
okay.
position.
I'll make it fine. I'll make a general statement. Veganism on a mass scale is impossible. That is my statement.
All
There
right,
you go. There's your
veganism
hypothesis. It is
is
on a
impossible.
mass on no on a mass scale. For the
Okay.
average idiot,
Okay, sure,
you
sure,
would
sure. Yeah,
not be
okay.
able to do it on a massive scale, right? Not everyone could be vegan. It's physically impossible. There's your statement,
Okay,
right?
so
It is
veganism
impossible to
is impossible. And then so veganism in this
on a mass
case
scale. On a mass
right,
scale. You
right,
have
right.
to put
Okay,
on a
yeah.
mass
I
scale.
mean like yeah, global veganism it's impossible on a mass scale. And so by veganism in this case, I
No
take
consumption
that
of animal products.
yeah, I think that's going to be required to be a little more specific. Like I would just take that to be the direct consumption of animal products, right? Like the eggs, milk, and so
As
on.
in consuming it into your system, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, so you could
E
also look at like dog fighting, right? I would argue that that's just as much consumption as a cheeseburger. You don't necessarily need to physically ingest something. I don't think that necessarily, though,
technically,
that type of stuff is really going to play into this. But that's maybe
okay,
like
so
a
are you
weird edge
saying
case.
consumption are you saying the consumption as in the straight up ingestion of meat and animal products?
Yeah, I guess in this case, if you're talking about like, because this is a food related argument, then we'll just stick to food related things. So you're saying that veganism, so I take that to mean the direct consumption of animal products.
Sure, let's even go that way, right? The direct consumption of animal products is infeasible for the mass majority of the population, correct? We'll just
It's
go with that
feasible for the
definition. I
mass.
know where this is going.
Okay, so when you say okay, so the direct consumption of animal products is infeasible for the vast majority of the population. Uh no, you're saying that it's infeasible. So like let's see here. So in this case what we're going to do is so in this case let's iron out a little bit the infeasible for the vast majority of the population here.
You wouldn't be able to feed everyone. Like infeasible as in you wouldn't be able to get the sheer bulk numbers of plants to feed everyone.
Okay, so
And vitamins
it
and other things. You
is
wouldn't be able to feed everyone. That's the point.
impossible to feed everyone
A plant-based
without
diet.
the direct consumption of animal products. Yeah, the problem is that like so I mean now I have the statement it's impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products, but I'm not sure that like for instance I guess in this case would you be barring like any sort of like unusual circumstances of like living in the Arctic or something like that, or like I don't know, like if you're on a desert island or
I'm
something.
saying the vast majority of the population. So I'll give you 4 countries, right? And those 4 countries would not be able to run without animal products, whether it be on whatever level you want. I'll just say function as in human beings wouldn't be able to feed themselves. The US, Canada, Britain, and I'll just go, fine, and not even Britain, I'll just give you 3 areas. US, Canada, and the EU, right? Europe, right? Western Europe. Right? They would not be able to function without the consumption of animal products. Like you couldn't feed every person without animal products.
Okay, it's impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products. I guess we'll say in Western countries, due to some sort of scarcity or unsustainability issue.
Essentially, yes. You would not be able to get the bulk numbers of plants required to feed everyone. Either people would start starving and dying, or, right, you would be feeding them improper foods, which would not be nourishing them to the extent that animal products could. Like, you couldn't feed them, like, on the same level, right? It would be worse. It would be worse off for their health, whatever, right? They would starve and or not have the right nutrients.
Of the U.S., Canada, and the EU. Include. Okay. All right. So I guess I have here. So it's impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products in the countries of the U.S., Canada, and the EU due to mass starvation. And I'm assuming that this is like in a like some sort of long term type scenario. That like
I don't even mean long term. I mean short term, within like a year. Not even long term. Wouldn't be decades. It wouldn't be years. It would be maybe maximum 3 months.
Yeah, I guess, but what I'm saying specifically isn't that like for instance, if you snapped your fingers and everybody became like ill upon the consumption of animal products, like that would cause like a mass hysteria or something like that. Like you're talking about like the conversion over, like it would be impossible to convert over.
Right now, if we vanished all animal products, right, people could not eat the animal products. We just took it away from their stores, right? Nobody could, right? We took away their chickens, whatever. You cannot consume animal products. People would starve because they don't have the sheer bulk number of wheat and other things to feed people, right? You don't have enough plants, you don't have enough everything to feed people. Like, it's not possible. For the consumption.
Ukraine.
Yeah, pretty much, right? My point is that we need meat because we don't have the numbers, right? So there's not enough avocado. There's not, like, to give the healthy fat. There's not enough, fake meat, right? There's not enough. The infrastructure to make that fake meat doesn't exist, right? My point is to substitute meat and animal products, right, including dairy and other things, so that people grow healthy bones, whatever, right? Other than breast milk, are you okay with breast milk? Would that be cool with you if everyone was having vegan breast milk? All the people who create the breast milk are vegan. That's cool with you, I assume, correct?
Or would you I mean, like, it's not necessarily that, like, again, like, well, yeah. So I mean, that's like but that's like a really kind of asinine definition to use of like something's like an animal product,
I'm saying, point being, we wouldn't have milk, we wouldn't have eggs, and we wouldn't have cheese, and we would not have protein, right? And we wouldn't have meat. And without
the thing is that, like, yeah, if you like Thanos snapped all of the animal products out of the grocery store, like I could even be willing to accept that as like trivially true. But I think like what you're trying to get at is that the conversion over to a system is impossible. That it would be impossible for people to like move over
even
to
over
the voluntary.
Even over 20 years, the infrastructure required to create this food does not exist. And even if we tried our best to make it, right, exist, we wouldn't be able to feasibly feed everyone, because I'll give you an example. For every steak I eat, I would need like 3 salads to qualify, right? I would need to replace it with a very bulk amount of greens to replace that. And even then, I wouldn't be replacing all the nutrients, but I would be replacing it in my stomach, right? Because as you know, protein fills you up faster than other vegetables, right? So you have to eat more vegetables to qualify for, like, I don't know, a pound of meat is not the same as a pound of vegetable, right? It's not in density in the stomach, right? I learned this in kinesiology. And so,
well, I don't think anybody's like, yeah, I mean, I think that's trivially true.
Right? So,
sure.
Exactly. And so, point being is, for the average person, they would need 2 pounds of, veggies to qualify a pound of meat. Just an example. I don't know the exact math, but I'm just making an example. So to grow the mass amounts we would need to feed people, we don't have the land to do it. Like, even if we tried to convert over, we would have to be growing on multi-tiered systems. So, like, imagine an apartment building all with, growing systems. And we would have to do that for entire cities just to grow the amount required to feed 1 or 2 cities, right? And again, that's infeasible because we need that land, right? We need to use it for population and other things. So we don't have the land to grow these things.
Okay, so
and
you're saying, all right,
develop
so
it would damage the environment.
Yeah, so what it seems like you're getting at is that it's impossible to feed everyone without them directly consuming animal products in the countries of the
Even in
U.S.,
the long
Canada,
term.
and EU due to mass starvation in the long term. So that would be, i.e.,
Or short term.
that it would be infeasible to convert over to for everybody in those countries. It would be impossible
Yeah, pretty much.
for everyone
Assuming they
those
want to go along with it.
countries to convert.
What even
over.
brought up this debate? Like, what made y'all
Basically,
start debating
we
about
were
this?
talking in whatever channel he was talking to, Red, the server owner, and I basically he said something along the lines to Red of let me pull it up. It's a really big while back, but it was like last night or something, and
Well, I don't understand
so
why people are vegan in the fucking first place.
Red asked me what my honest definition of veganism is, right? And my honest definition of veganism, quite simply, was someone who attempts to live a purely plant-based and animal product-free lifestyle. That's my definition. And my personal interpretation is someone with a lack of education on the subject of food security and availability, right? Basically saying that this person is not educated enough to understand that if you wanted to try to do this large scale, you're stupid, right? Like veganism on a large scale is absolutely retarded. And then Karnik disagreed, and so we're here.
Who cares about veganism on a large scale, bro? Like, at the end of the day, vegans are gonna die out. That's just natural selection. Like, you know, if they want
All
to
I
starve
know-
themselves, let them starve themselves.
All right.
All I know, right, is somebody that fucking works on a cattle ranch, right? With the mass influx of vegans coming into Colorado and stuff like that, fucking this industry has never been better. Believe it or not.
Yeah, people actually
Literally,
really hate vegans. Rather spite them.
well, not only that, right? But all these vegan farms want like mountain raised beef manure, healthy beef manure for their farms. So it's just giving cattle ranches more money.
Sure. Yeah.
Also,
I mean, so these are all like completely separate propositions.
And I'll be the first to tell you, right? Yeah, factory farming is fucked up. If you're not treating cows, you know, like a cow,
you're an
you
ass.
shouldn't. You shouldn't be fucking ranching. Sorry, like
Pretty much.
they're not.
Same with chickens.
They're
If they're in cages, you're a jackass.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
stop.
No,
Like,
dude.
Okay.
listen,
I-
none of us agree with this.
I
Nick,
agree
just
with the
to-
naturalism, right? I agree with the naturalism. I mean, I live in the fucking mountains, for Christ's sake, right? But I just couldn't live without beef. Literally, I wouldn't make money, right? So
That's not. Nick is making a very simple scenario in which
and the thing is that's what we farm, right? One animal per fucking bullet, right? I'm not fucking ripping up the ecosystem
Antec,
to plant a very specific.
Antec, that's not the argument he wants to have. So Antec, and this is a
I don't
common.
know. I'm just
tactic
saying.
vegans- I know you're just saying, but I'm saying usually vegans will specifically they want you to write a thesis, essentially, right? They want you to give a thesis statement because then they can attack that rather than attack the whole argument.
Well,
because
fuck
at the end
that.
of the day-
Fuck that.
Yeah,
I would rather
again-
just talk to somebody man to man.
But see, here's the thing, Antec, and I'm sorry to say this, Nick, it's going to sound a little mean and personal, but vegans are smarmy little shits, and they can't attack the basis of these arguments, so they have to cut it down to one very specific thing and go, oh, well, technically this, and this. They have to get into the technical and the very specific and the very deep-rooted scenarios in society and this and that, right? And so instead of addressing a real point, they try to corner you into a specific point. That's why I said I know where this is going, where you're trying to get me to say there's something very specific so you can attack it rather than attack my basis point. Because vegans don't really have the proof to do that. Again,
I treat animals well. I have nothing
know.
people can attack me over. Wow, I shoot a fucking animal and I sell it. Holy shit.
Yeah, but Nick, so what did you want to say about the thesis I gave you? Based on my words,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess if you're upset with arguing about environmentalism and you would rather argue about the
No,
ethics of it, then
it's
that's
fine.
fine, you know? Like,
No, no, no. I'm not saying the ethics. My point is this, right? Attack the point I just made earlier, right? Is veganism, yes or no, right, for a vast majority of the population, feasible on an economic, right, sociocultural? So you have to convince people of it too. So you have to be able to convince them. You then have to make it financially possible for countries to do it. Environmentally, so again, you have to find the land to do it, and you have to make sure it doesn't kill anything.
The Eastern
because if
Asian
it kills
countries are not going to do it at
Okay,
all.
but let's just say, and then you have to find a way to make sure it doesn't.
all right, so
doesn't kill
here's the
anything,
scoop.
because-
I mean, I enjoy
go.
like a lot of people having banter. The problem is that that can be a recipe for like conversations to get derailed, and then we end up like asking the same question after like, you know, like people go back and forth, like following each other down a rabbit trail of a derail. So I'm
Okay,
happy
but
to
Nick,
talk to
I was just
everybody.
gonna ask-
Yeah.
Yeah, but Nick, I was just gonna ask this, right? From what you heard of my question, right? And then finally, would we be able to do it in a way that doesn't argue against veganism? Because if you kill animals, not just bees, not just some like animals, voles, mice, right? And you're killing these creatures to create your food, you're not a vegan. I don't give a fuck what you say. You have still killed something to get your food, right? Whether it be the consumption of animal products, but the animals are still dying at the end of the day, and it's because of
All
us,
I gotta
right?
say is, if you're concerned with animal death, start foraging like you're a fucking caveman, dude. Like,
Pretty much. That is your option, because if your food requires the death of animals, you're just as bad as me, who has to put a bullet in an elk's brain or in a cow's brain to get the food. You're just as bad as me. The only difference is yours is indirect.
but just keep in mind that we still kill less animals than the average vegan, whether it's directly
wanna
or
get into-
indirectly.
All
If
right.
you wanna get
so
into numbers,
this
yes.
is like so
one
right now you
one
guys are
animal per bullet or arrow, right?
Right,
I mean,
so-
versus all these organisms getting fucking gassed like it's World War I every fucking day in a farmer's field. Like, yeah.
okay, so the problem is now we're arguing a bunch of completely different propositions. Like if you want to argue something completely different, like that's what I mean
I
by
don't
like
know. I
derails.
brought that up earlier. I was just kind of talking about myself earlier, but
Okay. Well, I guess yeah, like thanks for sharing. But you know, I
yeah,
don't know
bro.
if you wanted to discuss. I mean, we could go wherever you wanted to go. But I mean, we were ironing out a proposition that has nothing to do with
Fine.
crop
Let's just go with the
deaths.
proposition I made. Let's just go with the proposition.
Okay, yeah.
There you go.
So like I wrote it down in the environmental
Yep, I
chat.
saw it.
Okay. Okay, cool. So you'd like sign off on that?
On the statement you made, let me just read it again just to be safe. It is impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products in the countries of the US, Canada, and EU due to mass starvation in the long term, that it would be impossible for those countries to convert over to a diet free of animal products. Yes, I do believe that.
Yeah, free of a diet. Sorry, a diet free of direct animal products. I should specify.
Sure. No.
Yeah.
I do believe that in the long run that would be infeasible if we just don't have the numbers of,
Cool.
veg
Yeah.
foods or whatever you
So
want
what's
to
the
feed them to
evidence
do
for
it.
that? What's like the what would you like to submit as evidence for that?
Would I like to submit as evidence for that? Okay. Well, it takes more space to have a soy farm or a wheat farm than it does a cattle farm.
Okay.
Let's just assume bread, right? So
Okay. Well, I guess I'm not sure how that gets us towards the proposition in question.
So what I'm saying, the point was, right, is that it wouldn't be possible to switch them over because we wouldn't have the numbers to feed them. Like there wouldn't be enough plants to feed them. That's my point,
There
right? Is that we wouldn't have the infrastructure to grow it.
would not
We
be
would not be able to
enough plants to feed them.
plants whatever you wanted to feed them. So for example, the average size of cattle farms, right, is 1,700 acres, right? Or 1,700 or 1,072 acres, right? 74. But, the average size of wheat farming in the USDA, and this was 1994, right, was 1,120 acres. So again, more acres covered, right? Like it's a much larger acreage. It's essentially harder to grow plants because you need more, right? Because they can die, whatever reason you want to give, right? It's much harder to farm these things than it is cattle. And I could bring in my buddy who's a farmer. I could bring in numbers. I could bring in stats, and I can prove it. It's harder to grow these things, and it's also you need more space to grow it, meaning we would have to expand crop farms to create that. We don't have the land to expand it to that extent.
I'm still not getting the
Catch my drift?
inference as to how it's impossible. Like, even if I were to grant you that.
Okay, let me ask you this: you have to feed people, right? That's an obvious one, right? People need food, correct?
I mean, that's
I need
embedded in the
a
proposition, yeah.
Okay, so if you don't have the amount of farmland needed to grow the food to feed these people, what's going to happen, Nick?
I don't know why you're asking me that question. If you
Well,
have a
I'm
claim,
asking you
if you want to go ahead and make a claim, make a claim. Like, so you're saying, I'm assuming that
well,
you would say
I'm
the
getting
answer
to
that is no.
I would say that we don't have the farmland to do it. I'm being very direct, right? I'm being very precise. We do not have the available land. We would either have to destroy forests to build it. And even if we did, I'm not even sure if there would be enough land, even if we destroyed a bunch of forests, to grow the amount of crops required to feed a vegan only country, right? Only. And that's just one or two countries, let alone the entire fucking world, right? Or not even one or two. That's just Canada, US, and the EU. We wouldn't have the numbers. Even over a 20-year period, we would not have the space. Even if you decided to convert cattle farms, dairy farms, a bunch of farms, you wouldn't have the infrastructure. You wouldn't be able to do it, right? It
cool.
would require too much gas.
Yeah. Well, I think we're still back at the start, which is what's the evidence for that? We don't have the available land. What's the evidence that we don't have the available land? I mean, you're applying some sort of contradiction on the view by saying that something's impossible, right? So some number needs to be greater than some other number, or something needs to. There's some contradiction, some you know, in terms of the union of some proposition P and not P, right? So what is that? And what's the evidence for that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, pulling it up now.
This is a pretty boring debate.
I mean, I'm just asking what the evidence is. I mean, if you want to claim that something's impossible, that's an unfalsifiable claim, right? You would have to be the one demonstrating that something's impossible, right? So what's the evidence for that?
Average farm size, right, for cattle, and this is Canada, right? I'm just going to use Canada as an example because it doesn't change across really anywhere, right? And we're just going to use a cattle farm as in not milking, just regular slaughter, right? It's around, that's not the average cattle farm size, that is, pulling it up now. And that one, it's not giving me the land, it's giving me the percentage of son of a bitch. Okay. All I know is it's under the average for crop farms, but just give me a second. Aha, okay. So it is around 600 to 700 acres, right? Give or take, right? For the average cattle farm. And cattle are the biggest, so I don't really imagine it would be much larger for pigs or chickens, right? Would you agree on that?
I guess this is just taking into account the cattle themselves and not the food that's grown to feed them.
Well, the food that's grown to feed them is part of our croplands.
Right, but then if they
The same
weren't
crop
being,
we get
but
to
if they
benefit.
weren't being bred into existence, then you wouldn't have to feed them.
Yes, however, they don't really eat that much more than we do, ironically. And also, a lot of the times, they're not always fed crops. A lot of times, these groups also feed them the grass on the land. So, because if you're, 700, 800 acres, they can, each cow requires 1 acre. So if they're breeding 700 cows, right, 600 acres, 700 acres would be plenty. They wouldn't really have to feed them anything else, but they could.
So you're
And it wouldn't
saying,
really require much anyways.
so you're saying it's 600 to 700 acres, and what does that
Could
acreage
feed
represent?
anywhere from 500 to 600 cows because the average acre required to feed a cow is 1. You can look that up if you want.
Okay, so to feed,
And that's grass. No, that's grass. Like that's on the same land as the grass. They're not using cropland. They're just eating grass on that land. meaning the same land they're grown on is the same land they can consume, meaning you wouldn't really be changing much.
So are you talking
Like
about?
they're not eating any of our food,
You're talking about specifically pasture raised.
which is a lot, right? And they don't always have to feed them wheat and other things because they don't need to. Usually the ones that are raised on soy and our crops are the cheap ones that are factory farmed because they don't keep them out in grasslands.
Okay, so
I'm talking about farms, not factory farms. There's a very big difference.
yeah, I guess okay. So 600 to 700 acres to feed 500 to 600 pasture raised cows. Okay, like I guess
Give or take.
that cashes out to about the 1 acre per cow that you're
Give or
trying.
take. Plus, you have some extra ones just in case, right? About extra 50 to 100 acres just in case, depending on how many cows you have. So you wouldn't need to feed them anything else. And do you know what the average size of a crop farm is?
No, if you want to make a claim, go ahead and do that.
800 acres. The average size.
Okay. 800 acres. And then how many okay.
809 acres. It's down from 820.
Okay.
I know the average sized crop farm around here averages at about 40. But that's just this county, so this county's been relatively good at only consuming stuff it produces. This is also the only county in Colorado that told the state government to go fuck themselves when they implemented a magazine mandate.
You do understand we all now know which county you're from. Like, we can just look that up and it's pretty probably available.
Yeah, Mesa County, bro.
Motherfucker. Just straight up that's it. Okay. Well, to be fair, you do have guns, so if anyone pulls up, they're getting fucking blasted.
I don't give a fuck. This is a make my day law state. It's also a castle doctrine state. So try and fuck with me on my property. I'll blow you up the wall. That simple.
Okay. Anyways, there you go, Nick. If it costs more land to produce, cropland than it does cattle, even if you replace the cattle, it would require more cropland to keep everyone fed.
I'm still not understanding how we get from 600. So we get 1 acre per cow, and the average farm is 800 acres. How do we get from
cropland
that?
Okay, the average crop farm.
Sure.
Think of it this way: the average crop farm, right, which can feed probably the amount of the average cattle farm, right, give or take, probably not much more or less, right?
I'm sorry.
Require
Say that last statement again.
The average crop farm can probably feed the same amount as the average cattle farm, give or take, considering cattle are much larger in size, right, for the less amount of land, right? So you would need.
I would need a reference for that.
You ever seen
you also need to fucking keep in mind that it takes crop farms to feed a cattle farm.
Right. I guess in this case, though, he was just talking purely about pasture-raised and I'm guessing unfinished cattle.
Oh, well, no, dude. You gotta feed your fucking cows grass hay, bro. Can't just let them fucking eat the environment to dirt. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so I guess this is like what I'm talking about. Like, we're still like waiting for the inference to be made to where it demonstrates that it's impossible.
I wouldn't say it's impossible. It'd be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people would die. A lot of people would fucking, a lot of people would do stupid shit.
Well, okay, so the stupid shit's not necessarily a, yeah,
personally,
I
would go eat the person that outlawed my way of life.
Well, I'm not talking.
I would go eat him.
We're not even talking necessarily about outlawing, right? I mean, like, we're just debating the proposition here, right? So like there's the proposition here that it's impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products. And I'm just wondering what the evidence is for that. And so far I've got that a crop farm is 800 acres. I don't understand what I
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
a cow will
and there's
eat
cattle there's fucking cattle ranches up here that are well over 140 acres.
Yeah, I guess I'm still left wondering, like, what's the evidence for the proposition?
So here's the evidence right here. I think I sent this link yesterday. Essentially, what this will explain to you is that if the world went to a fully vegan diet, right, it would put insane stress on the land and water resources we have. Again, because you would have to expand current farms to feed the amount of people that a cattle farm does, right? Because you'd have to be replacing the fact that meat isn't in our diets anymore. You'd have to feed us more. Because again, protein fills someone up faster than carbohydrates or a plant does. So you'd have to.
There's a lot of protein in different vegetables, man.
Yeah, but nowhere near the amount of beef. I mean, kidney beans or whatever beans.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
again,
that's why we eat beef, right?
Exactly.
So.
And it's also better in vitamins, which help fill us up faster. So again, nothing comes close to the pack-a-punch, so to speak, to the stomach of filling it than protein. True protein, not plant protein. And this source, if you want to read through it, I remember reading this in, I think, anthropology class. It basically explains that veganism on a mass scale is almost damn near impossible. There you go.
Okay, so let's go to the conclusions here. So I'm reading here.
My conclusion is I'm almost out of fucking cigarettes and I live on a mountain, so that fucking sucks.
The matter of converting pasturelands into croplands and discontinuing livestock production, if the vegan ideology gains worldwide acceptance, means the increase of plant products. Yeah, most gains. Okay, so it's just talking about the benefits. Okay, so these alternatives, however, may have some demerits per water quality, soil salinization, as well as the global water cycle. So what's interesting is that if you actually so I was looking at that and I was trying to find what it was talking about in terms of water. And really what it was talking about was that if you have a more dense cropland, you need more irrigation. But it's not clear to me that this is saying anything beyond the fact that you have to just be careful with how you distribute your cropland. This isn't necessarily, so I don't see that as demonstrating that it's impossible, nor is it demonstrating that there's even if I did grant the claim that more water was required, if that was that it was going to actually
the conversation was supposed to go to begin with.
I mean, he's trying to demonstrate that it would be impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products. And so if there's some water issue here that we run into, but it's not clear that this source even gives a coherent argument as to why it's impossible. I mean, and it seems like they hedge their bets because they say a lot of things that's as well as provide, but it may really compromise water and land resources.
Okay, so
as well as biodiversity. Yeah.
Because they can't, in studies, they can't just say it guaranteed will, right? No studies nowadays do say that, right? They will say may or might or this or that, right? Because again, they have to be very specific in some areas and non-specific in others so they can actually get their research paper published. I believe you've gone to university, so I would imagine you would know that.
I've written research articles, yes.
Yes, so you understand how hard it is to get them published in some cases, right? Especially when you have to be very specific. And so as a whole, right, they had to be, very precise. But the person who wrote that article is a good friend of one of my professors, and I actually got to speak to that person, and they said it would be infeasible. Like on a mass scale, it would be infeasible, right? And he explained, and this was his point, the same point I'm making, that even if you solved the irrigation problem, the amount of land required, right, which they don't bring up fully, but they kind of touch on in one of the points, is at the end of the day, right, if you tried to grow it, you would have to replace, let's just say, all cattle farms, right? So we just let cattle roam free. We don't fuck with them anymore, right? Well, those cattle need land. We wouldn't be able to encroach on that land, right? But we would still need to grow crops, right? And we would have to grow them on more land than we currently have because the crop farms we have feed people a supplemented diet mixed in with meat. So imagine how much more we would have to feed people without meat, okay?
I'm
Again, you'd have
still
to
wondering
supplement
what
that
the
food somewhere
evidence for
else.
that is. I'm still left with this one question in mind. What's the evidence? So you've submitted a paper. That paper says there may be some issue with water, and it turns out that that's not clear how that would factor into the impossibility claim. So what's the evidence? Hello?
Yeah, I'm just researching. I'm pulling more papers up that I have.
I mean, if you wanted to go look up papers, I mean, I'm kind of like waiting around for papers to show up. I mean, basically, you'd just be asking me to read papers in real time. I mean, did you actually have evidence that it's impossible? Let me help you out with something real quick, okay? Because I think that this is going to go around in circles, and where we bring up a research article, it turns out it doesn't really affect the claim, and then like another 15 minutes later we pull up another research article. Let me shortcut it a little bit here, okay? So I typically don't offer counter evidence, I just ask people to present their evidence, but this is just something that I will state, is that I know that because people think that if they attack somehow the counter evidence, that substantiates their claim. And I don't care if you believe this or not. This is just information kind of for your edification that I happen to know. That if you look at, like, for instance, global food production, we take about 36% of the calories that we grow, okay, and then we feed that to animals. That's about something like that, you know. And of that 36%, we get back 12% of the calories in animal food. Now, I'm not saying 12% of the global food production, right? I'm saying 12% of that 36%. So we take 36% of our food and we turn it into 5% of our food by inserting it into animal products. And this is just the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, if you look at like animals eating protein, I mean, that's essentially, 100% of that protein came from the plants that they ate. If you have like a herbivorous animal that's eating, your best bet, the only way that you could ever escape the second law of thermodynamics is pasture-raised unfinished cattle, which is approximately, I'm going to say 0% of cattle. Yeah, I mean, plus or minus. Maybe there's like 5 hippies somewhere in the mountains of Colorado that are growing unfinished cattle. That's almost none of them. And so the thing is that if you actually look at this, right, kind of, you just take a step back and you look at this, right, and you just think to yourself, all right, so how is it that we could take a third of our food and light it on fire, right? And if I said, like thermodynamically, right, that's the equivalent of what we're doing, right? And if I said, let's stop this process of lighting a third of our food on fire, that somehow we would run into some issue, right, where we would require more land. Like, imagine we weren't lighting a third of our food on fire, and I said, let's grow our food time and a half again and light that amount that we're going to increase it by on fire. I mean, I don't see how you could get to a situation where, and again, you're free to present a case, but I just don't see how we get to it takes more acreage to not light a third of our food on fire than it does to, right? You see where I'm going with this? Like how on earth do we get there?
So can I just ask you, with this, do you know how many tons of topsoil are lost annually to erosion due to crop farming, and how that's unfeasible in the long term if we had to expand upon that? Let's just assume we did have to expand on some small amount, right? Just enough, right? Let's just say by 20% we had to expand, right, to feed everyone else. Yes, I know we lose 1/3 of our food to, cattle and other things, but let's assume that's not enough to feed us, because arguably if we need fucking 60%, right? 60% of that, you think 30% is going to be able to feed the other people who don't supplement that? So let's just say we need another 30% just for shits and giggles, right? 120%, right? Just to
Wait, I'm sorry.
feed everyone.
120%.
I'm saying based on your math, right? Based on your math, right? We human beings eat 60% of the crops we produce, correct? 64%, because you said 36% we burn, right? The other 30 or 64% we don't burn, meaning we consume. right? So let's assume
Yeah, plus
that's
plus the
enough to
plus the 5% plus the 5% of So this isn't by tonnage. This is just by calorie.
yeah, we're assuming caloric intake, right? But
Sure.
let's just assume that, to supplement that, we would need, on top of the 36% we're growing, let's just say we need 26, right, to supplement it, another 28%. Or no, 26%, right? Because, no, 24?
I'm
Would
not
that make, yeah, 24%, sorry.
I'm not
Assuming we need
following.
24 extra percent. So we would need to expand farmland, right? Just a little bit, not by much, right? So we could produce 24% more. So instead of 100% of the crops, we would be producing 124%, right? We would actually increase our crop production, right? Just to supplement the fact that we wouldn't be eating animal products anymore. Would you be unamenable to that?
I don't think you're understanding how like the second law of thermodynamics works, right? I don't think you're fully appreciating it, right? Because we're growing, let's say 100 calories. Okay. Now we could do whatever we wanted with that 100 calories. But what we do is we set aside 36 of those calories and we then feed it to animals to retrieve 5 calories out of that. Right. And so if you then do the math calorically, right, then actually if you were able to just decrease the number of calories grown, of course, this is a completely oversimplified model, but then we would be decreasing the amount of farmland by 31%, just based on this naive back of the envelope calculation. So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand how we get from the back of the envelope says 31% decrease. And it's fair enough if you want to say that calculation doesn't make sense because X, Y, and Z, and that's totally fine. Right? But I don't see how I'm looking at this from just a back of the envelope kind of view and saying we could decrease the farmland by 31%. Right. So how do we get to more acreage is required? I'm still not understanding how we get there.
Okay. Right. I'll give you an example. So you said we grow 36% of our crops and we get 5% calorie back, right? Because we get 5 calories out of whatever, right?
Sure.
And however, right? Except each one of those calories is way fucking denser than the calories that were fed to the cows. Again, the caloric intake is healthy and all, and it's awesome, right? Calories in, calories out. But 1 calorie of meat and 1 calorie of protein from a fucking plant don't fill a human body the same way, right? They don't really sit in the stomach. I'm talking the second stomach, right? If I eat a pound of meat, as you agreed earlier, and a pound of, I don't know, fucking kiwis, the kiwis aren't going to fill me up as fast. I'm going to burn through those calories faster, right? If I go for a run, right, I'm going to feel hungry after I eat the pound of kiwis. I'm not going to feel hungry after I eat the pound of meat, right? So again, you would need to feed people a lot more, right? People would have to intake a lot more of those plant calories than they would meat calories. And any nutritionist could tell you if you replaced meat with people's caloric intakes, the average adult needs like 2,500 to 3,000 calories. That increase, like we'd be increasing that like 4,000 to 5,000 calories of plants just to supplement the fact that meat is not in their diet, right? I don't know if you've studied nutrition, but meat and protein is a lot denser in our stomachs, and you can eat a lot less calories of that and fill yourself up a lot more than you would with plants and other such things. I don't know if you felt that or experienced it, but I can tell you firsthand I have, right? You were vegan, so I assume you haven't in a while. I don't know how long it's been, but So again, yes, we sacrifice 36% of our, let's just say, plant intake, right, to give to cows and other creatures. But the yield we get back is ironically a lot denser than the plants we gave them. Like if we ate those 36%, we would not really be filling up ourselves as much as that 5%, ironically. Right? You're equating these numbers as if they mean the exact same thing. It's like weighing,
right. The problem with
it's
that,
like weighing 1 feather versus 1 pound of fucking, gold. Like you're assuming, 1 gold bar and 1 feather weigh the same. No, they don't. Right? That's the assumption you're making here. Right? 1% of this and 1% of this are the same thing. No, they're not. Right? That 36% of plants that we're giving to these animals, I wouldn't say weighs, but is a lot less dense calorically, ironically, than the meat. That 5% is worth a lot more than you get a credit. It's probably worth more like 40%.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I'm not suggesting that we substitute like I think you might be running into an issue here because the example you gave, and I don't know if this was an exaggeration, was to substitute, for instance, 100 calories of beef with 100 calories of kiwis, and that's not the suggestion, right? Because the argument again is that all of the protein that these animals are generating comes from the food that they consume, right? So when you feed, a cereal, let's say, to a chicken, right? The protein that you're getting when you kill the chicken comes from the actual like wheat germ of the cereal that you're feeding the animal, right? So again, the suggestion wouldn't be. I'm still not clear how we get to the the proposition as it stands. By the way, I think you might also really want to look, like, have you looked at, for instance, the number of grams of protein per calorie in like something like tofu versus something like 80/20 ground beef?
Yes, I have done research on that.
Okay. Would you stand by the ground beef having more grams of 80/20 ground beef having more grams of protein per calorie than tofu?
Again, it is not just the grams of protein, right? So you want to eat your tofu, right? And I know this is going to get into a little pissing match because it will. However, your tofu also turns you into a little bitch, right? Your tofu actually isn't as high quality as the ground beef. If I eat 80/20 ground beef and you eat tofu only, I'm going to have way denser and way tougher muscles than you are. Because at the end of the day, and I'm kind of getting sick of this, right? Look, human beings are carnivores. We eat meat. We survive on it. It is what human beings have eaten for centuries, and it's what we've always eaten, right? And I'm kind of done with the whole, fun debate, right? So I'm going to say it this way. Meat is guaranteed to survive. This veganism shit will never survive long term, right? You could push it down people's throats, you're going to get shot. You could try it socioculturally, it's not going to work. Economically, you'd be shutting down businesses that would, get very angry at you and potentially not like you very much. And, people have tried to stop these businesses and they end up alive. So again, right, point being, even on a non-environmental level, veganism long term, because I was looking at it holistically, so all of it together, right, is not going to happen. But if you want to go with the environment purely, right, just land-based, right, yes, the protein may be higher per calorie. However, it's not as high quality protein. Again, there's a difference between the amount of it and the quality of it. As I was saying, you're assuming that 11 grams of protein is better quality for the human system than that 8.9, because it's 11 grams of protein per 100 calories versus 8.9, which is what I just looked at. So, but you're assuming that 11 is better than that 8.9 in quality. Because if I eat 8.9 grams of Wagyu protein, it's better than, fucking the 80/20, right? Again.
I mean, I still don't understand how any of this gets us towards the proposition that it's impossible to feed everyone impossible to feed everyone without the direct consumption of animal products due to mass starvation.
People work out, people lose weight, people yada yada yada, right? And so again, people working all day, people burning calories, right? Calories in, calories out. If you want to just go with base number of calories, yes, they're correct. However, if you want to look at the quality of the calories, you're wrong, because the quality of the calories matters a lot. Right? If I eat a pound of tofu or a pound of ground beef, I'm going to feel a lot different and I'm going to function a lot different, right? So holistically, I won't be able to survive. Like legitimately, I would not, right? If I ate a pound of tofu, I would not survive. And let's just say I did, I wouldn't be surviving very well. And we know this, just fun little fact, tofu and soy and all the things that you recommend we eat as good protein, you know who, and this is anecdotal, but which societies ate that? Just real quick, Nick, which societies came up with that? I would like you to answer. There is only one correct answer.
Well, I mean, tofu is literally a Japanese word.
Okay, so it's Asian. And who's the most feminine looking men? Like which group of men are the most feminine looking? They have the weakest muscles, yada yada yada, right? Which group, arguably? Please answer. You know it's the same answer. You don't have to it's Asian men. Because soy and tofu and these other things have been found to not be as high quality protein as meats. Right, we've noticed that legitimately. Why do you think? Okay, let me ask you this: why do you think they're the shortest? Why are they the shortest? Some of their climates are the exact same as ours. Their diets are the only thing that was different. Why are they shorter, Nick?
So are you suggesting that it's a correlative? I don't think you really want to go down the
diet based. I'm suggesting it's diet-based. I'm suggesting that the diet we eat throughout history is what shaped us into what we are now. There's a reason why the two largest groups are the ones that ate meat a lot. The two biggest and toughest and strongest and smartest groups are the ones that ate meat a lot.
Okay, so you're suggesting that the tallest people are those that eat meat?
I'm suggesting that the healthiest people are the ones that ate meat, because height and all these other things and success are the ones that.
Yeah, it's still
at the
not
end of the day, we can
still
go
not
down.
clear how we're getting to mass starvation here because the infrastructure is not in place. I'm still not understanding how any of this correlates. I mean, you're again throwing in more completely unrelated propositions, and if you want to debate those, that's fine. But we would have to concede that we didn't provide any evidence that it's impossible to feed everyone.
Well, at the end of the day, right, you're going off of these base numbers and you're assuming that tofu with the 100 calories of tofu, right, is 11 grams of protein. So we could easily supplement tofu for, or ground beef for tofu. No, we couldn't. Right, the quality isn't the same.
No,
So again,
I was just asking if you were aware of that fact. I wasn't necessarily making any prescription in that direction. Just because it was something that was thrown around a little bit. I just wanted to ensure that we were on the same page. But no, I mean, I'm still waiting to hear. I've got so far that the average crop farm is 800 acres, and we don't have the available land. I'm still like wondering how we get from lighting a third of our food on fire to we now require more land. I'm still.
Who cares about veganism and fucking who's vegan and who's not vegan? If somebody tried to make me vegan and there was no other meat left for me to eat, humans would be on the menu in 3 days of me not eating anything. All right?
Yeah, but it's not clear how that gets us towards the proposition at hand either. So
I don't know if you can live the whole world, if you can make the whole world live off of veganism, if like it's physically possible or not. I don't really give a shit, The thing is that at the end of the day, I'm gonna eat meat. That's all that I care about is what I eat. Nobody's gonna tell me what I can and cannot fucking do. And if they got a problem with that, well then,
yeah, okay, the thing is that this doesn't get us towards the proposition that it's impossible to feed everyone, right? So I'm just still wondering where's
or not. Who cares? It's just so irrelevant. Neither one of you can control who's in charge.
Okay, so then we would concede then that we haven't provided any evidence that it's impossible to feed everyone on the basis somehow that we're running into some problem regarding some kind of land limitation.
Okay, Nick. Well, I'll end this because I know how this is gonna end. I concede that point. I'll give you a new one. Veganism is the dumbest fucking thing to exist, and it couldn't be feasible on a socio-cultural level. I'll give you a whole different. Fuck that. I'll concede that one. You're right on that. There you go, buddy. But guess what? Fuck veganism. It's retarded. It makes no fucking sense. Let us eat our meat. There you go. That's the new proposition.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Were you interested in me demolishing the ethical argument against veganism?
I don't give a shit about veganism. You could be a vegan all you want. It's not my body. It's not my problem. I don't care.
If you want to go with the ethical, he's trolling. But if you want to go with the ethical argument against veganism, there is no argument you can make on your side. It's a dumb argument because you're going to kill animals either way. I'd actually much prefer putting a bullet in them myself than having them indirectly die because of my retarded stupidity of wanting to fucking say, oh, I'm going to eat vegetables. I'm going to just say this right now. There is no way you can make a morality argument for veganism. Ethically speaking, it's no different than regular farming, right? Factory farming, yeah, you could win that one. But if you're talking regular farming, like just the average farmer putting a bullet in his cow's head, you lose that debate 10 out of 10 times. There's no
I don't
there.
give a shit about animals and their lives, bro. I would eat a cat and a dog, I just don't fucking care. They're animals. They're not humans. They don't have.
As long as you're not, yeah.
I mean,
As
you're
long as you're
obviously
not torturing
you're
the fucking
spending a
animal.
lot of time telling me that you don't care.
He does.
You guys just shut the fuck up about vegan shit.
He actually doesn't care. He just wants this topic. He likes having fun topics. He doesn't like this topic. I actually like don't care in the sense of be vegan, right? Do what you want. Just don't act all high and mighty. I think it's very hypocritical and cocky to do that, and very arrogant. I think it's stupid.
I think vegans are hilarious when they go on and talk about like how they are the ones that are right. I love it, Heinz.
But in an ethical argument, I'm not even going to listen to your ethical argument, Nick, because there is none. Like, there's no argument you could make that would make any logical sense that would say, oh, well, veganism is more ethical than, killing an animal yourself. No, it isn't. Like, you could win on the factory farming. You're right. Right? When it comes to factory farming, no, that's completely unethical. Right? Yeah, I don't even need to debate that. You'd win that one. But if we're purely talking about like regular farming where you're treating the animal with love, kindness, and respect, and then you kill it at the very end, and you don't stress it out, you don't torture it, you don't abuse it, you make sure it had a long life and enjoyed its life, whatever, right? That's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so everything that you've said so far in regards to the ethics is a devastating attack on consequentialism. It's a real pity I'm not a consequentialist. Otherwise, I'd probably be swayed by your argument. I mean, yeah, I mean, basically what I would say is that it, like I said, it's a logical consistency test, right? So you could just as easily make all of these arguments for murder. Like, absolutely none of these arguments holds up, right? I mean, I would assume that you would say that murder is unethical.
Yeah, in the sense of human beings, correct. Yes, because murder
Okay.
requires to be human beings. Again, I don't
depend
consider
on what
murder
you would
to be-
define as murder.
Yeah,
Sure, okay,
you wanna
yeah.
define
So
murder as
killing,
an animal,
okay, so indiscriminate killing of human beings is unethical, and
Sure,
the torture of
Uh,
cows
oh.
you've admitted is unethical.
Yep.
And I'm assuming then, so I mean, we
And you're
sort
a
of.
consequentialist, I assume, correct? You said you're a consequentialist, correct?
No, I said I'm not. I said specifically
Oh,
what you
not.
said is all a complete yeah, it would be a devastating attack on consequentialism, but I'm not a consequentialist, so none of that concerns me. The real question
How would it
is,
be hold up, how would it be a devastating attack? I believe that the ends justify the means.
yeah, that would be that would be an attack on, or like, I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about, like, for instance, killing
That
for
would be
food
a
versus killing
supportive
for food or something.
consequential. If you wanted to get specific, that'd be a supportive consequentialism.
It's neither here
I'd be
nor there.
supporting it by
None of
saying-
this actually attacks my argument, because my argument is just quite simply that you've created this rule, right, where you can't torture animals, you can't torture
we have to have
humans,
ethical
you can't
standards.
kill humans, right? So we have this rule against the harming of these beings, except we've made an exception for specifically the killing of, for most people, specifically certain animals.
Okay, well, it's the simple question.
I
It's the
think
simple
more
question of,
people
okay,
need
so
to torture
let me ask you
animals,
the
not
classic.
less.
Hold up. Let me ask you the classic question of would you rather, or hold up. I know the question. I just have to clarify it.
So anyway, yeah, what's the justification for the exception? Right?
Okay, hold up. I have to pull it up. A train is barreling down a track at 5 people. You're in a position to throw a switch, diverting the train to another track to hit only one person. Do you do it? Yes or no? It's the classic question. Very classic.
Yeah, that's a
Do you
trolley
do it?
carism.
Yeah, the trolley car doesn't. Go ahead. Yes or no? Are you gonna click the lever or no? You gonna let the
Yeah.
5 people die, or you gonna let the one person die?
Yeah,
Which
so
one?
here's the problem: is that what you're presenting is an unfalsifiable situation, right? Where you've presented this exception for this rule,
Yep.
and so if you wanted asking me this question wouldn't help you reject this null hypothesis, right? You would just be identifying some problem and some contrary view, even if I did have some sort of, even if you were able to nail me down on some kind of problem. At best, what you'd be saying is some other worldview is incoherent. That's fine. That wouldn't demonstrate that your own is coherent, though. So you would still fail to reject the null hypothesis on that basis. So actually, you probably shouldn't use this argument, right? Because if you fail to reject the null hypothesis, then you, by definition, then veganism would stand, right? So this would just represent actually you wasting your own time. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm fully aware of what you're saying there.
Yeah. So again, right? If we don't justify that exception for the rule, right? Then what we're left with is an unjustified exception, aka special pleading, which would be required, on the view that then animal products are ethical to consume, which would then represent a completely incoherent worldview. So then go ahead and make it coherent for me. What's that symmetry breaker between the things that we say are ethical and unethical?
If you wanted to get into the very deep specific, right? Is it wrong to kill an animal? Okay, well, I'll give you a argument in return, right? And you may disagree because of the sick part, but do you think it's okay if a human being wants to end their life because they're sick?
I don't know why you're asking me that question.
Assisted suicide.
Well, what I'm saying specifically is that the carnist worldview is incoherent, but I don't subscribe to that worldview, so I don't know how me answering that question would justify carnism.
It's a simple question.
In terms of like quality of life, if like one has no quality of life left.
Okay, so there are some circumstances in which it is okay to kill, right? That's the end goal. There are some circumstances in which someone dying is acceptable, correct?
I mean, if you want to advance that argument, that's fine. Okay, we'll accept
that's the
that.
argument that you just agreed on, right? You just said, if the quality of life isn't good, then yes, right? So again, in some circumstances, it's okay to kill. So again, the carnist view is in some circumstances, it's okay to kill because we're feeding ourselves. So again, very simple argument: 1 + 1 = 2, right? It's okay to kill some things under some circumstances. Equals we can kill some things under some circumstances. Boom, very simple.
Yeah, that would be affirming the consequent is what that logical fallacy is, right? So that's like a God is love, love is blind, Ray Charles is blind, therefore Ray Charles is God type argument. That's the primary fallacy there would be, well, not only equivocation on love, that's fine, but affirming the consequent. Just because two things both refer to a common thing doesn't mean necessarily that you can't distinguish in which way the two sets are overlapping. So what you were saying there is the symmetry breaker would be things for which there's no quality of life left. So, okay, then it's okay to eat roadkill. Or, for instance, to eat a cow that has died of old age. But that wouldn't demonstrate that it's ethical to slaughter an animal. So I'm still left at the beginning asking what that symmetry breaker is. I mean, you've definitely provided a symmetry breaker that works very well for, like for instance, eating roadkill, and I'll give you that. But we're still left at the start. What's the symmetry breaker?
Okay, essentially, Nick, right? And I'm not going to get into the deep philosophical argument. I'm going to get into the very simple ethical argument. Right, the deep philosophy of why it's wrong to kill an animal, because if you kill this animal, then so and so reasons. I literally took multiple philosophy classes. I'm in my 4th year of university. I've taken all the way through 3 years. And throughout any of them, I've heard many people debate these things. And I'll say it this way, right? Without having to ram ethical jargon, and I mean in the sense of, oh, well, hypothetically, this and this and this, right? At the end of the day, right? Outside of all these, philosophical theories, right? When it comes down to it, me putting a bullet in an animal's brain is not the same as me putting a bullet in a human's brain, right? Do you agree to that? It is different.
Yeah, my argument doesn't rest on it being the same thing. I mean, obviously they're different because they're different actions.
Well, yes. And so, right, if you want to argue sentience for whatever reason, if you want to argue that a human being is, I could argue that a human being is a different level of sentience, right? You could then argue that cows or whatever. We could go on about this for hours, right? On whether or not, the sentience level of the animals we kill, and therefore which animals should we kill based on their sentience, and many other different arguments, right? At the end of the day, the conclusion is killing animals for sustenance, right? Without suffering, without torture, without whatever, right? Is morally justified as a whole. And I could use God as an example. I could use whatever I want, right? At the end of the day, it's cool. It's okay, right? Because for your food, you still have to kill animals indirectly, right? The death of animals is inevitable, right? It's a guarantee, right? The logical fallacy here that you're presenting is your food, right? Well, veganism doesn't kill animals, so it's okay, right? Well, no, that's a fallacy because you do kill animals to get your food, and there is no way around that. Right?
No, that's not
The
an
difference
entailment of my view. That's not absolutely nothing about my, again, not a consequentialist. So the deaths, somehow the number of deaths or counter or anything like that has nothing to do with it. All right, I'm just simply applying a logical consistency test and saying that this view is logically incoherent. Right. So you're saying that killing animals in a painless fashion for sustenance, killing specifically non-human animals in a painless fashion for sustenance,
yes.
for
It's
physical
entirely
caloric
ethically valid.
sustenance. Yeah, I mean that's just a redefining of your special pleading. That's not actually a defense of it. Right? So the worldview still remains incoherent. What's the symmetry breaker here? Right? Why painless? Why sustenance? Like we're still left at the beginning here. What's that symmetry breaker?
You're basically asking why that, right? Why that line, correct?
Well, what I'm
Why
saying
draw
is
that
that
specific line?
yeah, why is this the exception to the rule that we're drawing? Right? We said torturing animals is wrong, like killing in a non-painless fashion is wrong, not for sustenance is wrong, not animals is
Because
wrong.
while we can
What is
acknowledge
the intersection of those three things? Right? Like for
the
instance,
intersection is that yes, animals are sentient, yes, they can feel things, and it would be cruel to harm a creature, right, unnecessarily, right, in a way that they can feel, right? It's not like they can't feel these things. It's not like they do not have emotions. We know they have these things. We know their brain identifies these things. We're fully aware of that, right? We're all fully aware of that, whether we want to or not. Yes, this thing has a family. Yes, it has emotions, and yes, it has sentience. We're all aware of that, right? Some could argue it's on a human being's level. But if the food was on the other foot, we had to eat humans to live, we would pick and choose. We would do the same fucking thing, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, meat is required. It is. It is. Whether you want to say, well, you could live off this diet, bullshit. Vegans are on average less healthy than meat eaters. And I don't mean like McDonald's meat eaters. I mean like a healthy carnivore, someone who works out, takes their time in the gym, right? That kind of thing, doesn't eat junk, versus a healthy vegan who doesn't eat junk. The carnivore is going to whoop the vegan's ass day in, day in, day out, guaranteed, right? Just because human bodies require meat. They do. Without supplementation. I don't mean any modern science. I mean just a regular diet, right? No supplements, no nothing. You have to eat just plants or just a vegan diet versus just a protein diet. And so, again, we have identified that it's okay to kill these animals as long as
yeah, I mean I just take that I just take that argument to be no different than if you said like that a carnivore is more healthy than somebody who specifically only ate watermelon. Like, okay, that I don't know why if you're excluding all products that are not that are outside of animal products. I mean, why not narrow it down further? I don't think that's not a cogent argument against veganism
the point
or
I'm
meat
making
being
is that
required.
no. The point I'm making is that we know that meat is required, right? We know it is. That my point, and you may disagree with that, but that's why I said the other statement of the two people, right? I gave the example of that, saying meat is required, right? Because it makes humans function well. But anyways, we know it's required. That's just a fact. However, right, since we've acknowledged that meat is required, we have come to the conclusion that yes, torturing these creatures that are sentient and do have emotions and whatever you want to add is wrong. And we have added that unnecessary pain is wrong because they do feel these things. And at the end of the day, yes, they will feel them. However, we still want to eat them. We still want to eat their flesh. So we say, make it painless. Don't torture them. Kill them humanely. Right? Of course, you can define humanely however you want, but we have defined it in a way of do not cause unnecessary suffering. And yes, you could define unnecessary in a gajillion ways, but we've defined it already. Right? And if you want to use if you want to use consequentialism, if you want to use objectivism, if you want to use whatever other type of ism from philosophy you want to use, that's fine. At the end of the day, right, human society has come to the conclusion it is okay to kill these animals as long as you are not torturing them.
Yeah, that's just an appeal to tradition. Not that human society's come to something. You would then have to demonstrate that conclusion that human society came to wasn't done on the basis of special pleading. So that would start us back at the beginning of asking what that justification is.
You know what? Even if it was based on special pleading, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, but
Even
that
if
would
it
just
was based
represent
on
a
in this
completely
special
logically incoherent worldview then, right? Because you'd just be applying a rule that says P and an exception that says not P. So then your worldview by logical explosion would completely collapse.
based on logic by philosophers who wanted to try to, break down these ideas and things like that. At the end of the day, being a philosopher is one of the most confusing things. Right? Ethics are defined based on person to person. And by ethics, I mean what we gradually accept based on whatever philosophy we want to adapt. Right? Even my philosophy professor in first year said, if you want to try to have an ethical debate, it's going to be interesting. However, he did say this, and this was my personal favorite thing he said. Right? When it comes down to it, when it comes down to it, what the society says is ethical is what's going to go, right? Whether we want to agree with it or not, that's the ethics, right? So again,
Yeah, that's just a might
debate,
makes right argument.
it is a might makes right because it is a might makes right because blood, fire, and steel, right? The classic argument. It is a might makes right. Might beats right. And at the end of the day, since the majority say that it's cool to do that, there you go.
Okay, so anything that's ever
your
been
argument.
So you're saying that any atrocity in human history has been is ethically justified?
No, I'm saying there's nothing we can do.
Well, I'm not asking if it's
Because,
anything you
again,
can do.
you're
I'm asking if it's
you're
ethically
comparing-
justified.
Okay, fine. I'm going to get really mean now, you smarmy little shit. Don't try to compare the Holocaust or something else to us killing animals. If you do that, you're a sick little fuck. Okay, that is really fucked up. No, that's fucked up. Okay?
No, I'm just
putting a
asking
bullet
for
in a
logically
cow's
consistency here.
leg?
Right? I
Logical
mean,
consistency based on what? Logical consistency based on your logical worldview, your ethical worldview?
no,
Because
based
again,
on yours.
what I am saying, but Nick, what I am saying is in this case, right? Because the might makes right? I'm saying with this specific thing. Now, if you want to apply that to whatever other argument, that's not what I said, right? I am applying this ethical worldview specifically to animals and humans, not to every other part of the world, right? This is specifically to this. There are different ethical arguments for different things. I can hold two different ethical arguments for two different scenarios, right? Just because it's true for animals doesn't mean it's going to be true for World War II, right? That's my point.
Yeah, you could have a symmetry breaker. So what's the symmetry breaker here?
Is that we change the argument for humans and animals because we want to eat them. And
Yeah, that's just a redefinition of special pleading. The worldview is still incoherent. You're still asserting a contradiction here of P and not P, right? If you don't care to have a logically consistent worldview, then that's fine, but that's not a logically coherent argument against veganism, right? If you're like, well, I can argue against veganism. Step one, throw out logic and logical consistency. Like, okay.
Logical consistency based on what?
Based on the fact that you have a rule that you've asserted P and an exception not P. And I'm just asking, what's the symmetry breaker here? Right. Let me give you an example here that you'll probably agree with is somewhat silly, right? Let's say you and your friend are walking down the street, right? And there's a shiny blue Porsche sitting right there, and your friend says to you, "Hey, you know what? I think that you and I have the same views on property rights, except where I specifically think it's okay to steal specifically blue cars, right? Not vandalize, and it's not red cars, and it's not blue motorcycles, right? Specifically, the intersection of steel, blue, and cars is ethically justified. But I agree with you everywhere else on property rights, right? I mean, like, what the hell kind of worldview is that, right? What is the try and think of something that you would say to that that's not something along the lines of like, what the hell is the justification for that, right?
You know what? I know what you're getting at, and you know what? I'm going to be the psychopath here. I do believe every atrocity is okay because of might versus right. The majority want to kill a small minority. Go ahead. Yeah, sure. There you go. Logical consistency. There's your logical consistency, correct? Because I know what you're getting at, right? The logical consistency.
No, I mean, but it's not, right? Because that's just saying. Well, I can steal a blue car, so therefore I will, right? No, that's not. That's just a redefinition.
I think it is okay to slaughter animals, and I also think it's okay to slaughter humans. There's your logical consistency. That's what I just clarified. You said,
okay, all right, cool.
It's okay.
Yeah. All right, so then
think it's okay to.
Okay, yeah. So that would be a completely different argument, which is essentially an argument from something along the lines of moral nihilism. So if you want to defend that argument, then that's totally fine. So we can change gears then. So if you want to defend moral nihilism,
you wanted logical consistency, and there's your logical consistency.
Okay. Yeah. So if you want to defend moral nihilism, then the argument there would be just rather simply that by virtue of the fact that you have subjective experience and by virtue of the fact that you do anything, right? You feel the need to urinate, so then you go to the bathroom and you do so, right? You are hungry, and so you make yourself a sandwich or whatever it is, right? Then you have moral agency, and in this case, you are the sole moral patient of your agency. So then,
yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, the best argument for moral nihilism is against we exist to exist. There's no purpose, so what matters? It doesn't matter. We exist to exist. It doesn't matter if we kill this animal. It doesn't matter if we kill this person. We exist to exist. Boom.
Yeah, well, the problem is that that's completely indistinguishable from a situation in which you are the sole moral patient. So then the question would be just quite simply, what's the justification for you and you alone being the moral patient?
No, it isn't. It's complete moral nihilism on everyone. Anyone can be the moral patient. Everyone is the moral patient. You can do what you wish. Complete anarchy.
No, so that would not be universal moral nihilism would not be necessarily a defense of the special pleading of your moral nihilism, right? Saying that like everyone else could special plead wouldn't be a definition. It wouldn't be a defense of your special pleading. It would still be a completely logically incoherent worldview.
No, it's completely like I don't see the logical fallacy here. I don't see where the system breaker is or the code breaker or whatever. I don't see where that is.
No, I'm saying the lack of one, right? So the question then would be, what's different about you that's different about everyone else such that you are the sole moral patient of your actions rather than anybody else, right? It's not as though we stick you in an MRI machine and it lights up and we put everybody else in there and it's completely black, right? Then we would be like, oh, wow. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Ains demon.
Everyone gets to have no. But again, moral nihilism, right? Again, you can do what you wish. Everyone can do what they wish, right? That's what it comes down to. It's no one else puts their worldview on anyone else. You just get to do what you wish.
Yeah, so that would then be like,
so we can do what we want.
Yeah, no, so you're confusing two things here, right? That would be the fact that everybody's special pleading would or has the opportunity, I guess, under your view to special plead wouldn't be a defense of your special pleading. Right? You're saying that everybody has the opportunity to engage in special pleading, which is not the case. That's not the argument here. Right? The question is more specifically about your special pleading. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Where's the logical to do with my special pleading? Because I'm the one making the rule in the scenario?
Oh, I mean, again, because you would be applying some rule P, which is that there are essentially no moral patients here, right? And then there would be some rule not P, that is that you are actually a moral patient. So then under your worldview, you would both simultaneously be and not be a moral patient. Or at least you would be adopting a position that's indistinguishable from that position. All right, so then that would still be a logically incoherent system of thought. And therefore, the worldview would collapse. But anyways, again, like, I mean, it's all stuff to think about. If you want to think about it, you totally can. But yeah, that's that would be the argument then. What's that symmetry breaker? So if symmetry breaker doesn't exist, I'm not sure what basis you have to claim any sort of logically coherent argument against the direct consumption or against the abstinence from the direct consumption of animal products.
Can I just ask your argument for why veganism is moral?
I mean, that's completely it, right? It's that we have all of these situations in which we all agree that the direct consumption of animal products is basically there's no symmetry breaker between that and all the things that we agree are unethical, right? And so we sit down and we like look at killing other people. We look at whatever it is that you want to point to, the torture of animals. And so the question is quite simply, can I come up with a symmetry breaker? And in the absence of coming up with a symmetry breaker, right? The statement that a symmetry breaker exists, that would be an unfalsifiable proposition.
Do you think that we were talking about this yesterday? Do you think that I feel like you like talking about this a lot?
Yeah. That's not like it's my username or anything.
Do you think that torture and slaughter, you don't think those you can discern the difference?
Well, I'm not saying that I can discern the difference, right? Because obviously those are two different things. Those are two different labels.
We left.
Oh, yeah, it happens. Yeah, no, so I don't think that what I would say is that just